I'm going to take this tool. Now if you have a canning kit, if you buy a canning kit, this tool will come in your canning kit. But if you don't have a canning kit, you can certainly improvise. This could be a chopstick, it could be a plastic knife, that's fine. Just don't use a metal knife or anything that would scratch the inside. You want to run that around the inside of the jar. Make sure that you're getting all the bubbles up. Jab, twist, whatever you need to do to make sure you get those bubbles up, because that's going to affect the headspace. Now it looks to me like I had some good bubbles come up and now my liquid's lower. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit more hot water to the top of the jar until I come up to about a ½ inch. When you have the proper headspace and all of your bubbles have been removed, then you want to take a paper towel, get it a little wet, and then just run it around the rim here and get off any juice or any tomato debris or salt or anything that might be up there. Take your time and do this well, because you want to have a nice firm seal before you put this back in the canner. So that's nice and clean. Another tool that comes with your kit, handy to have, it's a magnet that sucks up one little lid at a time. But if you don't have this, it's fine. Just use your fingers and reach in and grab one. Don't use metal tongs, however. Don't grab them with metal tongs. You might scratch that bottom part, and you don't want to have exposed metal in your can. So you want to put that on the top, and then take one of your rings and screw that band around the top. Don't wrench it tight. These lids, and the reason we use these kinds of lids, the two-part lids, is to let air and gases ventilate from your food up and out of the can. And when this is cooking, this is actually moving up and down a tiny bit. So if you wrench it down, it won't have that ability to release the gases as it should. So just fingertip tight. You're just kind of holding the lid in place. You're not really holding it on tightly. So these lids, and these specific jars, and these canning tongs are the only two really essential pieces of equipment that you need for home canning. You don't want to try to take regular tongs and wrap rubber bands around them. I've done it. I have done it. It is, you know, you're working with boiling water. It's dangerous. These are not expensive. They're readily available and very handy. So just use the tongs to pick up your tomatoes, put them down into the water. The water should cover your cans by about 1 or 2 inches. And then you want to bring this to a full rolling boil before you start timing. Now how long you process your tomatoes depends on the recipe that you're using. The raw tomatoes that we did, just a cold pack, you process for about 80 minutes. And processing means you boil them for 80 minutes. If I had a hot product, like I had cooked the tomatoes, or I had made a nice salsa or pickles and it was hot, then I could process them for significantly less time. Every recipe will tell you how much headspace and how long to process your product. After it's done processing, turn off the heat. Let your jars sit in the canner for 5 minutes, because if the canner's bubbling and boiling, the stuff inside your can is bubbling and boiling too, and if you pull it out, it's definitely gonna leak out onto your counter. Sometimes I do these mistakes at home just to see what would happen. Like, what if I just blew that part off? It's not pretty. When your 5 minutes are over, use your canning tongs and pick one of your cans up at a time. And you want to remove them to either a wooden board or a cookie sheet that's covered with a cloth. Don't put them on anything that's metallic or marble. That's going to be too cold, and the difference in temperature can break your bottles. Also, you'll see there's a little lake of liquid when you pull this out of the canner. The temptation at this point is to tip and let all that liquid drain off. You don't want to do that either, because your jars haven't sealed yet, and you could be tipping juice out, and all that painstaking work you did to get your headspace right is lost because you've just tipped out juice. Let them sit for 24 hours. After 24 hours, you can check your seal. To do that, take off your band. If your tomatoes have processed correctly, and this is no judgment, I mean, you can do everything perfectly, and in the venting process, a little seed can come up and get stuck in the seal. Doesn't mean that, you know, you were wrong, but you do need to check. You should pull on it a little bit. One way to check is to hold it over the sink and shake it and make sure that it stays on top. This is actually, you want to give it a little wipe. This is the correct way to store a canned product, either this way or upside down like this. The rim can hold moisture and can rust and can compromise your seal. If you're going to move around, if you're going to take them to grandma's house, if you're going to send them in the mail as Christmas gifts, which I highly recommend because who doesn't love this lovely stuff for a Christmas present, then you want to put the band back on because it might get knocked around. If you put the band back on though, again, make sure you don't wrench it down hard because you could break your own seal and then it wouldn't be shelf stable. But if you follow these directions, follow your recipe in your book, this will sit on your shelf for a year and you can have winter fresh tomatoes. It's a very simple process and I highly recommend it.